Good evening. I call the regular meeting of the Ames City Council for Tuesday, September 9th to order. And we're going to move right into consent. And staff has asked that I pull item 7. There's a couple of minor changes that the university has asked on the street banner policy. Is there anything else that council wants to pull tonight? Entertain motion to approve consent less item number 7.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Betcher,
Aye.
Edie Hansen,
Aye.
Rollins,
Aye.
Poirier,
Aye.
Barton.
Aye.
Gump.
Aye.
Thank you. Apparently Iowa State contacted staff this afternoon and asked that there be 2 minor changes made to the University Boulevard to Lincoln Way on Mortensen Road, and the banners and the it'd be coordinated with the University Marketing and Communications with the phone number versus Director of University Marketing. And then the length of season is April through November versus year round. Are there any other questions on this item? Otherwise, entertain a motion to approve this item with those 2 changes.
Mayor,
Yes.
I am wondering if the references to the Main Street Cultural District are appropriate, or if the name of that area and organization need to be changed.
Thank you. I believe that's correct, that it's listed as Main Street Cultural District. I think it should be Ames Main Street. So we'll make that, I will include that in the motion to change that to Ames Main Street versus Main Street Cultural District. Anything else? All right, entertain motion to approve the revisions to the street banner policy with those 3 changes.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Those made the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Move on to public forum. This is time we set aside for comments from the public on topics of city business other than those listed on the agenda. We ask people to limit their comments to approximately 3 minutes. Is there anyone who wants to address council under public forum tonight? Okay, please come up here and just introduce yourself and you may begin. No apologies necessary.
First of all, I'd like to say that my name is Bo Gilbert. I live in Huxley, but Ames is my home. I have always come here, even when I was a child. I've always come here to do anything. There wasn't really much to do in Huxley. And that's why I feel that it is my need to tell you that I'm also a veteran. 4 years active duty. I was infantry from 2014 to 2018. And I am here trying to bring attention to something that is kind of been opened up for us by Iowa City, which is the boycott of Israel and standing against genocide. And I used to be a Zionist. When I joined the military, I joined because I believed in the United States and I believed in our allies. I believed that Israel was a multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religious country in the Middle East and that we were fighting for the right things when we were over there. I had the pleasure to train with many militaries, and I had the unfortunate displeasure of training with the IDF. And they showed me things and tactics and talked about things that I would not talk about in this courtroom to anybody. I never saw combat. I was infantry, so I know what it would look like, but I know that they don't do combat. They do things that are not human. There's rules to war for a reason. Iowa City has taken the first steps to make history in Iowa. And Iowa has always stood against governments and tyranny. In the Civil War, we had the most volunteer to go around and fight against the South for the freedom of people. Because in Iowa, we did our own work and we said, why should anybody work for somebody else when they live in mansions like that? And then those people didn't get any houses, as you know. We're all familiar with this history. Iowa City has opened up an opportunity, as I said. And this opportunity goes so much farther than just us standing against genocide. Because what's happening right now, I don't know if you guys know what the flock camera system is. I'm going to have to refer to my notes. I'm going to need you guys to bear with me. The flock security system is a nationwide network of 80,000 cameras, many of them in Ames. Our police station, or our police department, does not use flock, by the way, even though the cameras are still here. Interesting. I have 4 concerns about the flock camera systems. They are Israeli owned and they can be accessed outside of our nation and of our computer systems. We know this because they're Israeli owned, just like Palantir and many other security organizations that work throughout our nation. The Fourth Amendment under Carpenter versus United States long-term automatic location trafficking constitutes a search warrant requiring near perfect. What I'm trying to sum up is that there is a surveillance system that is not being used by our police system in Ames that is surveilling everybody that people outside of our country and outside of our nation can access to sell our identities, to do anything that they want. My constituent here, who is also a United States citizen, had Ames PD security cameras following him yesterday after writing Free Palestine on city sidewalks, which is 100% okay within city ordinance.
Sir, I've given you some latitude. You're at 4 minutes. Could you draw you said that Iowa City has done something.
They have boycotted Israel.
So can
And
you
that,
can you
as a
summarize
college
what you're
town,
asking?
yes, sir, I apologize for taking too long.
Just ask if you.
As a college town, we need to follow suit and stand against genocide, and more importantly, stand against a nation that does not care about any of us. They only care about control. In the beginning, Israel was started by us, and now because of the CIA's involvement, and this is all called conspiracy theories, but I encourage you to please read the JFK files. These are released by our government, by the CIA. If we're not to believe these, then who are we to believe? Not believing them is a conspiracy theory in itself. Please read the CIA files and understand that Israel is not our ally, and they are fully within their grasp to hurt our citizens in Ames. If that's not another reason to stand against genocide, I don't know what is. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? All right, we'll close public forum. We'll move on to item number 24, resolution approving amendment to the FY 25-26 asset contract with Salvation Army. Paul?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Tonight, we're seeking your approval on a contract amendment with the Salvation Army. If you recall, 2 years ago, the Salvation Army agreed to ramp up its hotel voucher program to meet sheltering needs in the community. So this is year 2 that they've done it on a grant scale. And so not surprisingly, we're asking to amend the contract just because we've learned some things along the way. So there are 3 noteworthy changes that are included in the amendment. The first is that with the not yet expended funds for this fiscal year, we've broken the remainder amount into 3 periods and then set an allocation amount for each of those periods just to ensure that there are funds year round. The second change that you'll see is that the Salvation Army will incorporate into its intake process a set of questions for the recipients of these hotel vouchers to complete. And that information will be provided back to us at an aggregate level. I think this is a real opportunity for us to gather information. It's a touch point with folks who are needing shelter. And so really just trying to capitalize on that opportunity to really gain some insight on where we could be making strategic investments. The third major change is that with the development of the Homeless Outreach Services team and the work that they've done this last year, one of the things that we would like to see is that the folks who are receiving a hotel voucher be a part of the discussions at the service provider meeting. So every Friday, a group of service providers are coming together to talk about what are the needs that are out there. So the idea here is that these folks would be discussed there unless they opt not to be discuss. So all of these are positive changes to the contract. And I do just want to thank the Salvation Army for being willing to serve in this capacity and working with us through this. And I'm really hopeful that with the additional information that we collect, it will really provide us some insight into our investments and where we can be making future investments and decisions. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Questions? All right, open up public comment. Anyone that want to address council on this topic? We'll close public comment.
So one question, Paul, maybe while we're here, can you give the council a sense of any trend lines that we should be paying attention to last year to this year in terms of the number of homeless?
So what I'll say about the program last year was that the city allocated about 120. We are allocating 130 this year. Sorry, I got my numbers reversed the other way, but the amount that the asset funders are investing is relatively the same. I think that, we have seen a larger increase in the number of folks who are becoming unsheltered. I think through the work of the Salvation Army and the host team, folks are getting insight into more families who are on the verge of homelessness and trying to move into that space to prevent that from happening. And so it's hard to gauge, but we know there's a lot of folks who are either on the verge or are unsheltered.
And so would you say that we're seeing more people homeless or about the same last year to this year? Is that possible to say?
Yeah, I think that the visible homelessness out kind of in the area has decreased, and I think everybody would agree.
Yep.
But that true number is so hard to get at. It's hard to say.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Entertain motion.
Move alternative one.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Move on to item 25, developer incentive request, follow up from May 27th. Good evening, Kelly.
Sorry, it's left-handed, so tricky. All right. So tonight we're returning to you from May when we first gave you a staff report in response to a number of developers' requests for incentives in support of residential development, primarily residential development in Ames. And at that time, there's no action by the council. We gave you an overview of the projects. The asks in total are roughly $10 million. They affect a wide range of different types of programs and funding sources within the city. So for follow-up, the council asked us to collect some more information from the applicants, or not the applicants, the developers, and for staff to address some of the issues related to the types of financing requests. In addition, what are some short-term and long-term costs related to the projects? And then we also went forward with trying to characterize some of the requests in relation to Ames Plan 2040 about whether a pioneer infrastructure policy or maybe an oversizing policy could apply to some of the requests, and gave you that picture of does that really address all of the requests or not, which it did not. And then we also went through and explored a little bit more on other options about how our water fund, our sewer fund, our general obligation bonds, how different things could add up to different totals of assistance. And we gave those as options in the staff report. And then we also highlighted in this report, one of the requests that came from some of the developers was to think about using TIF as a development incentive for residential, which we have not done previously. And we estimated using the current tax abatement program as kind of a benchmark. Like if you were to try to approximate that value or cost to the city, depending on how you look at that, we came up with a proposal as a way to think of it as a short-term stimulus program, which is how we looked at the abatement program. And there's a little bit more to that. If we go down that route with TIF, it appears that we would also have to look at a low and moderate income set-aside requirement in addition to the funds that would go to the developers. So we can talk through all of those specifics in the TIF as we get to that. But at this point, I guess I want to know where the council wants to start. There's a lot of information. I'm happy we have all the tables available, all the maps, all the development descriptions. I think it'd be best to really kind of address the priorities of council so that we stay on track for what you're most interested in this report.
You want to just, you had a PowerPoint in the council packet. Do you want to just go?
Yeah, sure. Just to help everybody get oriented a little bit.
Sure.
So this, so we have two different slides I'll look at. So for North Ames, we have 4 different development projects that are represented in the development incentive requests. So on this diagram, you're going to see what's referred to as Hayden's Preserve. That's on Hyde and 190th Street. So it's this 170 acres here. And the blue or gray, whatever color that looks like to you, that's just a generalized idea of a street layout. That's not an actual approved plan, but to give you some idea about the approach to development that may or may not occur on all of those developments. So that's a project that has over 600 units in its approved master plan. It's a mix of single family attached, detached, some multifamily and some commercial. Then as you move south on Hyde, you have the Auburn Trail project, which is exclusively single family development, likely to be all detached single family dwellings. And that's about 70-ish acres. I do want to highlight one thing here because this comes up in our report. So this square right here is the former Sturgis property. The city council agreed to let the Sturgises split their home from the remainder of the property. And then the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation acquired the remainder of this area. So this is area that is never or highly unlikely to ever be used for development. So you have this kind of gap on Hyde Avenue of natural area and a large rural home in that area. And that's important because when we set up some of the ideas of how development would occur along Hyde for connection districts and street assessments, there was some obligations about that frontage, which is about a quarter mile of street frontage and property frontage that were addressed in different ways. But now it's clear it's not ever going to be developed. So it does have some impact on some expectations for that area. And one of the more important aspects of that is this green line that you see here. This is a proposal from staff to address the need for an east-west sewer that would provide service not only to the Hayden's Preserve project, or at least part of it, but also to this Greenbrier project that's on the west side of the tracks. So the city has long held the need for a connection to go from Hyde over to this property for that to be served at its maximum density. The plan previously was to work through the phases of development of Hayden's Preserve at Hayden's Preserve's cost to provide that. We've pulled that out as a separate project. You'll see that listed under the Pioneer infrastructure, that you could look at that as solely as a Pioneer project. You could also look at it as a mix of Pioneer and oversizing, depending on how you sort it out, benefit and the alignment. Now, the issue with that is we do not have a secured easement for it to be constructed as proposed here. We've had conversations with both parties, INHF, as well as the owner of Hayden's Preserve. There appears to be agreement that it can be done, but tonight I can't tell you, yep, we can do that tomorrow. But it does appear that it could be done once we know if that's council's direction to pursue that or not. And then we're going to jump over the tracks here and go to Greenbrier. So Greenbrier is the most recently annexed property of the city as of this afternoon. So it's now officially approved. There's a 30-day waiting period with the state, but it did get approved by the state today. So we do know that now is within the city. So Greenbrier in our comprehensive plan has an RN4 designation, which is a little different than most of our suburban growth areas. It expects a mix of multifamily, a mix of single family, detached and attached. So a wide variety of housing is expected in that area, hopefully at higher densities than what you see in some of the other RN3 classifications. So that property has a Stang Road extension go through it. You can see this corridor for the sewer alignment that's planned. There's just a lot of things to work through there. In the development, it's also within the conservation subdivision ordinance. So a majority of the property does drain to Ada Hayden. Part of it goes west, but the majority goes east. And then as you go to the west side of Greenbrier, the other infrastructure that's discussed in this report is related to GW Carver and Cameron School Road. So both in relation to Greenbrier as well as the Bluffs at Dankbar Farm corner, there's requests for GW Carver and Cameron School intersection improvements to be part of the incentive package that is reviewed here by the City Council. So as I mentioned, Bluffs at Dankbar is the fourth project area. This is principally the 20 acres on the corner that has frontage on Cameron and GW Carver. The original Bluffs approval is to the west. There's a mix of single family and some planned townhomes in that project as well. You just recently approved on first reading, I guess second reading later tonight, the rezoning of that corner property. So it's going to have 5 acres of commercial development, and then it had approximately 14 acres for assisted living. And you reviewed that at your August meeting to approve that master plan. Is there any questions about the infrastructure of the projects in the north? The south one's much shorter, but there's a lot on this map. Is there any questions about anything that's shown here? Okay.
Kelly, on the sewer lining, I'm sorry, maybe I missed it. That would serve to open up some housing. What would that open up?
The slip lining?
Yeah, slip lining.
So slip lining specifically is in Moore Memorial Park. So it's off this map. It's an area that's been known to have some constraints ever since we annexed Scenic Valley. We did some improvements for infiltration in our system, and that resolved needing to fix it to allow for Scenic Valley to develop. Dankbar, the Bluffs at Dankbar Farms is working within the capacity limits there, but it is all used. Engineering estimates there's a small amount of capacity there. If there was a slip lining project to improve flow through Moore Memorial. So that's using the existing pipe. It's lining the pipe, minimal disturbance, relatively simple project. And it believed it could offer another 100-ish homes to be served with that investment before you would trigger that east-west sewer. So you can't serve the whole Greenbrier by doing it, but you could initiate maybe a quarter of the site being served by that project versus the larger east-west that's been planned for a long time.
So potentially the south.
Most likely it'd be that southwest corner because that's where you would connect into Northridge Heights where the existing sewer lines are.
Thank you.
All right, so jump into the south. It's much simpler. You have 2 active development projects in the south. You have Damani 1, just to get you oriented, here's Oakwood Road. Green Hills Drive is coming here past Christopherson Park. So Damani 1 is this area that's building out right now. And then you get to Cottonwood. And this next phase of Damani included the extension of Cottonwood through. Cottonwood's a residential collector street, so it's a little bit wider, a little bit more substantial street than your standard local street. And then that phase of Damani has some of the same Damani homes, and then some custom lots as you go south. And that eventually then connects as a local street down to Ansley. So Ansley is the other development that's underway to the south. It's a PUD. It has a mix of some smaller or some townhome homes as well as detached homes as well. You previously agreed to waive Ansley's requirement to pay for half of the paving of Cedar Lane. So as the project develops and grows further south, the paving of Cedar Lane ceases. It's a gravel road across the frontage of these 2 homes. And then this 40 acres here, ISU inherited an obligation to pay for half of the future paving of Cedar Lane. So the agreement that is to be completed would be the city is paying for half and ISU would still pay for half of Cedar Lane's paving. The discretion of when that happens is up to the city council. So there's no timing attached at this point in time. It would be at your discretion when there's a need, a demand, and there's financing to make that happen. So those are the 2 active projects in the south. Relatively straightforward request in terms of assisting in the Cottonwood extension, and then the previous agreement to waive the paving requirement for Ansley. Any questions about the south? All right. So as I said, in the updated staff report that you have now, we've included the developer responses to the 7 questions that council asked from May. Staff has given you multiple tables to illustrate the costs or the source of fundings to meet the interest for the incentives and different ways to look at that. And then again, we've proposed a way to categorize some of the infrastructure requests, and then we have multiple ideas which we described as options about how you could start to parse the requests. It's one way to do it. Under our staff comments, you can see there's a number of issues we think you need to think through. And we're looking for direction at a high level tonight. I don't think you're approving anything.
No.
So again, we're looking for high level direction on how to move forward, which has a lot of implementation steps once we understand what council's interest and appetite for this is.
Ultimately, the city council have to decide which developers you want to offer the incentive to, right? How much you want to offer. And then timing is very important because we're going to have to incorporate some of these into our CIP. So it might not be possible to do them all at one time. So let's prioritize those.
So with that, I'll take council questions. I don't have anything else to present.
Any tables you want us to go over to clarify for you?
Before we do, Kelly, just for people who are watching, could you give us a 2-minute just sort of summary? This is new for the city. I think a little bit of historical context is in order given what we're doing tonight. Could you give us just a brief summary of how the city has participated in development projects like this historically?
So I'll say in the last 20 years is probably as far back as I know. So historically, the city has participated in significant oversizing projects. So Sunset Ridge, as it developed out west, there was some cost sharing on like the Wilder extension, which is a residential collector street. For the most part, Sunset Ridge is a great example. The developer was responsible for everything essentially into the subdivision, access to the subdivision. But then when there was oversizing for a sewer main, so oversizing for Wilder, those are things that we participated in through a development agreement. And that kind of been the practice, was predetermined. Oversizing was really what the city council had done in the early 2000s. And then the really different approach was North Growth with Hyde Avenue, formerly Grant. That's where you had Quarry Estates and Auburn Trail and Hayden's Preserve, which is on this map. You had almost a mile of gravel road, multiple frontages and owners. There wasn't really a congruent method for developers to put that all together. So the city took that on for paving, water, and sewer, but we used assessment districts to be reimbursed for roughly 70% of the cost of paving for Hyde. And then we have connection districts for the water and sewer to be fully repaid over time, but we made all those investments up front, which was a different approach than what we had done with just oversizing, which was really just matching the developer at the time they do things. And now the third level would be what we've done most recently. So since adoption of Ames Plan 2040, you had access to some ARPA funds and you wanted to facilitate the growth of Ames, and you've used ARPA funds to extend mostly sewer infrastructure, a little bit of water infrastructure into the growth areas. So you did 2 different sewer main extensions out west. You did an east sewer main extension along 13th Street. And then you also did one to the southeast or to the south between Highway 69 and southeast of the Tea Garden area. So that was a wholly different approach because we had the council chose to use these discretionary ARPA funds to support development initiatives of the council. So that's kind of the 3 big buckets that the last 20 years that we've used as a city.
And is it fair to say that historically developers would calculate baked into their project would be they knew they would be paying a lot of the infrastructure costs, and then they would price the purchase of the land with that in mind, with the idea that they would in essence upfront the costs of the infrastructure, and those costs would be spread out over the lots. And so in other cities, they've socialized a lot of those costs over the community who have advanced some of those infrastructure particularly Pioneer infrastructure costs. So that in some ways that's lowered the cost of perhaps of those lots. Is that 10,000 foot? Is that fair?
It's very broad to say it's been socialized. I think it's selective by which community you're picking on how much investment really went into Pioneer infrastructure. And then again, like so Hyde Avenue paving project would be the most comparable to what you just said, where we did that, but we also had an assessment district to get repaid for most of it, and connection district. So we front the cost. The developer didn't have to take on that burden of financing things. So that's a plus to them. Some of the other ones, I guess it's just such a broad comparison to make. It's really hard to say it's equal to one city or another unless you get really specific.
Yeah, that's fair. But even those situations, we're in essence just financing that up front. The infrastructure is put in place, and then the city's backfilled eventually, right?
And that's, yeah. So in the Hyde example, yes, we are made whole for our investment.
Okay.
Okay, I'll give you another example. Staying Avenue, we were talking about the village. We wanted to help facilitate that, and we couldn't just bring in a couple of feet into the village as it developed. So we made a conscious effort to actually pave, remember, Staying Avenue between 24th Street up to Bloomington Road. The city paid for that, and we did not, I don't believe we asked for anything. Oh, we paid 100% of it because there was a conscious effort. One of your goals was to facilitate the village concept. So that's what we did there. So there's an example we didn't ask the developer to pay for.
So one of my goals in the course of this discussion is to try to understand a rational approach as these decisions or these proposals come to us in this group and then in the future, that we would have a rational approach to how we're spending public dollars, because these are public dollars. And I want to make sure that there is a benefit to the public for these investments. In other words, if we did nothing and we just went status quo, we would get one level of project or maybe no project. But then if we're making this investment with public dollars, that the public is going to get a benefit from that. And that's always been a challenge for me to understand this. So it doesn't appear to be sort of an inconsistent, okay, I like this project, I throw money at this. And so we have to have some kind of rational approach to this. So that's sort of my goal tonight, is we can find some kind of consensus around a coherent principle.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I just want to point out, well, actually, I want to piggyback on your comment. It's something we said in the staff report. We only captured the Pioneer and the oversizing requests that are on the table tonight related to these development projects. When you look at Ames Plan 2040, there are other additional Pioneer and oversizing asks that will come in the future.
Right.
So this report is solely focused on this. And we would have to, after we hear this, we think as staff, we need to come back and take what we learned from this process and set up policy or some kind of formula that would apply to the future that's going to come for sure also.
Absolutely. And so it's tricky. I don't know to what degree what we're doing is setting a precedent and how that precedent would be applied in a rational way. And maybe it's not. Maybe everything is sort of a case-by-case basis. And I'm supportive in principle of, this is what's being done all over Iowa. City dollars are being used to assist with these kind of projects. But I feel like I need to make sure that we're advocating that we're investing public dollars in a way that we can look to the taxpayers and say, we did right by you with these investments, and here's how. That's what I want to find.
Other questions? Rama?
Well, I appreciate your points, Tim. And I think it's an interesting question too, what other cities in Iowa are doing. I guess I was a little surprised at, I guess I thought Ankeny, for example, would be doing more than it sounded like they were. Can you remind me, Kelly, what you found for other cities at least in the metro area, maybe, or what you found?
So we only really focused on two, Waukee and Ankeny. I have a general understanding of West Des Moines. I don't think it's a whole lot different than, well, they're all a little bit different. So as you walk through this, different utilities, different water territories, different expectations of growth and pace of growth. So for Waukee and Ankeny, two very fast growing suburbs, right? Similar, but a little bit different approaches. So Ankeny does not rely, from my understanding, and this is how things are being done now, could have been different 15 years ago. Ankeny does invest in what we would probably call pioneer infrastructure. So they might widen or pave half a mile or a mile of road and then bring the water and sewer line along with that, like we did on Hyde. And they would put that into, my understanding is they would generally set up a connection district to get repaid. The street improvement may or may not get repaid. There's law about how assessments work. So they may apply an assessment, but if your ag property, you don't pay. And if it's after 10 years, you don't get paid either. So there's a little bit of, for our understanding, is a little bit of return on that, a street improvement that they have. Water and sewer, they do intend to get repaid on connection districts, but they don't use TIF. That's not something that they do. They just use their general capacity of general obligation bonds to do infrastructure. It is pre-planned in their CIP. It is not you show up and say, I need this project. Ankeny says, this is what we're going to do in this year in our CIP, and then they roll that out. Obviously, council makes decisions every year on actually following through on the 5-year CIP, but they do have a capital improvements program that includes those. Waukee is a little bit different. They seem to be a little less generous on their oversizing matches. They have a little bit larger infrastructure, but they kick in on oversizing. They do also do connection districts. They did not seem to do street improvements right now. In the past they have, and that was a little more muddy in terms of they didn't directly use TIF, but they have used TIF to fund like arterial streets when a commercial area was the generator of those funds, then maybe that street extended out past that commercial area. But they don't use TIF they don't use it TIF in residential projects per se. One thing that's, again, much different for Ankeny and for Waukee, the water territory buyout situation is way different. Ankeny, as I understand it, doesn't really have one because they're with the Des Moines Water Works on how they do water. And then Xenia does provide, or does have territory in Waukee, but their agreement was very specific and said only the cost of depreciated infrastructure is calculated for buyouts. That's way different than having to say, I'm going to buy out the future customer base that's going to go in here and pay, as we are right now, $3,000 an acre. So theirs is much, much less.
That's interesting.
And then again, you can go to smaller towns and get different answers about use of TIF. Huxley has used TIF at times for residential development. Other smaller cities have used rebates for developers. Some of them will do the improvements themselves, just like anyone else. So it kind of varies a lot on what your resources are and what your needs are.
And I mean, the part about like Ankeny doing some pioneer infrastructure, but planning it out in their CIP, like that is where I think more information about other areas, because like you said, we've had the 5 or 6 now kind of specific asks related to projects, but what else will come along that's in that same category? And would we prioritize that any differently if we knew about it? So that, I mean, that's a piece of information that I guess I'm hoping to ask more about.
Well, and that's really my question too. I mean, Ankeny's clearly been doing pioneer infrastructure for many, many years, right? It's built into the culture of their development. And if we move towards that shift in policy, which I'm generally supportive of, surely there needs to be some collaboration and coordination with the development community so that it's a combination, a balance of what the city wants to do with the 2040 plan, but also where growth is likely to happen, right? And so what does that look like?
Yeah, so when we adopted the plan, we took our best stab at saying what had to be done in the next 3 to 5 years to set the plan up for success. And that's how those ARPA funded projects were picked. At that point in time, it was like, without these sewer lines, nothing else matters. So those were chosen at that time to at least set it up that land could be purchased by somebody else and we could work through a development to make it happen. I think what's different here is you have property under control of developers and the requests are much more specific and they're very much an infrastructure oriented, or at least some of it's infrastructure oriented. Like if you build this, we can do the project.
Sure.
If we go out west and let's say we paved County Line Road, if we just chose to do that, I don't have development out there. So that is truly speculative pioneer infrastructure. Someday we're going to probably do that, or at least pay for part of that. But today, there's no user on the other side of that to say that should be something we need to do in the next year. And so I think that's part of your challenge is this is the immediate ask. There's another tier right beyond that, but I don't have other users that I could say it would make a lot of sense to invest in that.
Right. I guess that my question is more like, how do we set up an internal infrastructure where there is more of a collaborative approach so that we can anticipate and pre-plan for it in the CIP as we move forward?
I don't think that would be that difficult to coordinate with Public Works because we've adopted Plan 2040. We inventoried all of that in the scenario analysis. We just have to take that as the city, if that's what we're told to do, and say, this is what you would need to do over the next 5 or 10 years, rather than what are we doing in the next 2 years.
My other question is, if we're to do some of these things, the prediction is, over 300 units, something like that in the next 1 to 3 years. What does that look like compared to the last 3 years and the number of units that have
Yeah. So, and that was my reasonable estimate of growth, the 325 units over the next 3 years, if everything happened. So the last 2 years, so the year before tax abatement and the year with tax abatement, low 60s. Before that, we were probably in the 80s for single family detached and attached units. And then if you go back about 10 years, so 2015-ish, you were over 100 units of production for a few different years in that range. So it'd be getting back to a higher moderate level of growth for Ames if you were to produce 100 units a year.
Were those single family or single family attached?
Combined, detached and attached single family, not including apartments or commercial.
Any other questions?
No, I think it's just important to illustrate
Mhm.
like the impact on the number of units, the potential number of units compared to this trajectory we've been on for the last several years of not
Yeah.
a lot, and a lot of cities around us building tons.
Rachel, what questions you might have?
Nothing right now.
Nita?
So there was a little bit in there about recapture, and maybe you've talked about this a little bit with Ankeny and with Waukee, but it looked as if that depended on the type of project, and then whether or not, is that developer driven, or is that something that cities can try to recapture some of that investment again?
So for Ankeny, it's all interstate law, how you establish an assessment for a road improvement or a connection district for water and sewer. So they as the city choose to establish those at the time they construct the infrastructure. And then the assessment one's just a little different than connection districts. You can always get repaid for connection districts. They don't expire. Assessments have a limit on the assumed value the property owner is receiving from that improvement and their obligation to contribute back. It's just a different animal than connection districts.
Gloria, any questions?
Is that me, Mayor?
Yes, I'm sorry. Any questions?
Yeah. So do we have any idea what happens to any of our plans if we look at using local option sales tax and GO bonds, and the property tax environment and local option environment at the State House changes the playing field for us?
Was that
In other words, if we count on that money and we're looking at 4 years out, and we make a decision this year on using that money, are we likely to place ourselves in a position where we might not have that money to use?
Well, we're always under stress now what the state legislature is going to do. Not only property tax, right now there is only a cap on our operations, on our general levy, but there was talk last year that they were going to put a cap on all levies total. So that would put us in a real bind in terms of our debt service. But we're always going to, I think, for the foreseeable future, we're going to have that type of pressure on us. I don't know if that says we can't move ahead this year, just that no, the world may change. It'll change on us whether we do this particular project or these particular projects or not. You can't promise anything, is what I'm saying, in 5 years or 10 years. You can only do what you know you can do this year. So that's what we can move ahead with. But we'll be in trouble if they freeze our general levy along with our debt service levy. We just will. Because you have other projects besides these. As we make some internal new roads we're putting in, plus we have to maintain or replace the ones we have now. So it puts a lot of stress on the CIP to do it all. That's why you probably can't do it all at one time. You're going to have to make some decisions on prioritization, where your dollars should go. I know in Ankeny, I don't believe they just meet with the developers and say, okay, we've got 5 developers, want $15 million. I think like we do in certain programs, we put away a certain amount of money each year. So maybe this is infrastructure we're talking about, pioneer infrastructure. We put a certain amount each year. Then we work with developers and see who's ready to go and what gets the best bang for our buck. And I mean in terms of lots, right? Units we have. That's how they do it, and I think it's a good idea.
Other questions, Gloria?
Yeah, so the things that I have been thinking about are the uncertainties moving forward, but the certainty that we currently have the ARPA money, and we have the opportunity for 1,400 plus units. And so I'm thinking that the use of that money is a more certain way forward with pioneer infrastructure than perhaps relying on other mechanisms to fund it. That's all that I've been kind of rolling around in my brain right now, but I appreciate the other questions from council members that answered some of my other concerns and got clarification on some issues that interested me.
Thank you. Tim, do you have some more questions?
No, not this time.
Kelly, is there any discussion in terms of if these some or all incentives were to go forward, what that would do in terms of accelerating developments and or housing? Because I think from the dais here for a number of years has been asking, how many houses are getting started, and we've actually been going down. And if the city is going to be considering investing funds, is there going to be in response some increase? Was there any kind of conversation? If there wasn't, that's fine too. I was just curious if you had that conversation.
I think, assuming you let developers speak, they might be able to speak to that better than me. I haven't had any. I don't think anybody's committal on if this happens, I guarantee this is going to happen. I think it's the opposite of if you don't do anything, then it's unlikely anything's going to happen. And to be fair, in the last couple of years, we are not unique in the struggles of producing single family housing. It is a national issue. We're at a very low number. I'm not diminishing that, but we are fighting many headwinds in terms of financing and construction in relation to residential development. So 7% mortgage rates were a wake up call to many people, many things. If you read issues on national home builders, there is surplus of stock. There is not a large market that's moving around. So we're trying to meet our local need, but also try to push something against the economic headwinds that exist nationally too.
And can you remind us what was to meet 2040 plan? How many housing units? That would be both multifamily and single family. What are we supposed to be trying to hit on an average, and how are we doing on that?
So again, we didn't portray it as a target. We said the plan accommodated 300 units per year through 2040 for construction. So it wasn't a target of 300, it's just over 300, but essentially 300 was what the average would be if we fully built out in that timeline of that plan, which was an aggressive 1.5% growth rate. And we're more at 0.7 lately. And it was about 1% at the time we were starting the planning process. So we've dropped a little bit in terms of population growth, but we're nowhere near the projected number we used in Plan 20.
Also, the 0.7 is the growth.
Population growth, yep.
And do you have any idea off the top of your head what we're doing in terms of housing units multifamily and single family?
Off the top of my head, I can't. I mean, I told you the single family numbers. Multifamily has dropped significantly as well in the last 3 years. There's a few more projects that are going to be coming online this year and next year, but we had a drop for sure about 2 to 3 years ago.
All right, we'll open up public input. I think there's some people that may be interested in addressing council. So if you would like to come and there's no decisions being made tonight, but if you want to offer feedback, this is the beginning of a conversation. So the podium is open. Justin?
Mayor, as we have people come up, sometimes we have an expectation that we don't engage with the people during this comment, and sometimes we can. What are your thoughts on questions?
I think we'll allow some flexibility on that one, as long as we don't get into a long, drawn-out conversation, or you start throwing pencils at Justin, or Justin starts throwing pencils at you.
Yeah.
Okay.
No pencils.
All right.
I'm not throwing any pencils.
Just kidding. Just kidding. Go ahead. Go ahead, Justin.
Good evening, Council. Justin Dodge, Hunziker Companies, 105 South 16th Street. Just a couple of things come to mind as I'm listening to Kelly's staff report, and we do appreciate all the time that we spent with Kelly and Steve and the rest of the staff working through these. These are not simple topics to dive into, so we really appreciate all the meetings that we've had with them. So the thing that came to mind was we have the lowest number of lot inventory for Hunziker Companies as long as I've been around, and I think as long as Chuck's been around, which 25 years. And we just in the last year, with the Borgmeyer Greenbrier farm and a couple other parcels, now have our largest land holdings. But the numbers just don't make sense to develop as is, and that's why we're coming and asking for some help. I actually had, so we obviously sell lots to builders too. We have our own building company and then also sell lots to other builders. I now have one lot left in the city limits of Ames that I can sell to another builder. That's how short of supply we are. And in Gilbert, let's see, we just got one more under contract, so we have 3 that we can sell in Gilbert to another builder. So that, like I said, we see the permit numbers that Kelly's talking about. Yes, construction costs, interest rates are huge headwinds, but we're also fighting inventory. So the problems are real, and we're seeking help. So happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
So let me throw you a softball, Justin. So if you could have the best case scenario, what would you want us to do?
Oh.
So, I mean, this is helpful. This is helpful because it gives us a sense of your priorities and helps us to sort of think about the cost benefit analysis. What we're spending public dollars towards these projects. Help us think about what would help move the needle according to your perspective.
Yeah. I mean, the instant reaction would be just pick all of ours, right? But that's not fair. I think that there's no silver bullet, Tim, to your point. But I think staff and the city manager are looking closely at different options and what are the things that they could do. I think to even the conversations that they're having with Xenia Rural Water and talking through some of those things and renegotiating some of those agreements, those have real impacts and tied to real dollars and cents. And they're not associated with taxpayer dollars.
Okay.
So I'll ask you the same question that I asked Kelly. So if incentive or partnerships move forward, you said you had the lowest lot inventory in memory. What would you anticipate from let's say the next 1 to 3 years, the availability would be, and what would you anticipate that being a quantity and I'm not going to hold you to the number, but just the point is that one of our top goals is increase quantity and variety of single and multifamily housing units, that's been something that's been hanging behind us, for a year and a half. And so I think the council wants to see that happen. So we need more information to understand. But if it's just, well, we'll get 2 lots instead of 1, I'm making this up, okay?
Yeah.
But what do you think about it from an aggregate standpoint, talking to other, like with, Kurt and other people that are land developers, Keith, would we be hitting the 100 or 150 homes a year? Is that possible, feasible, or is that just not really feasible?
I don't think we have the number of people in the trade, Stephen, hit
Yeah.
those numbers anymore. But as far as low hanging fruit, the slip lining of the sanitary sewer through Moore Park, that opens up, a third of the Borgmeyer farm right away. We were thinking in the neighborhood of 25 to 30 lots for a first edition. We were hoping we would already be working on grading and underground utilities this fall. That's really optimistic because we don't even have a preliminary plat. We don't have any of the engineering done yet. And on those earlier estimates, even if we started this fall with grading, we wouldn't have lots to be delivered until July of next year. So there is a huge lead time, and obviously we can't pave streets when the asphalt plant is closed in the wintertime.
Mhm.
So we have to play around Mother Nature's calendar too. The other one that's low hanging fruit to me is Auburn Trail. And if we can work through some of the Xenia topics, like I said, I know that city staff has been talking with Xenia Rural Water about renegotiating that. And we've been working with city staff quite a bit on allowing lots on the Spine Road. Again, no cost to the taxpayers, but it certainly increases the lot count, which helps make the pro forma work and a project go forward. And so those 2 projects are low hanging fruit for us. And the first layout that we had for Auburn Trail was in the neighborhood of 30 some lots. I said, we generally have about 200 in the city. I think we're around 125 right now total
Of what? I'm sorry.
of available lots, whether they're in the hands of builders or in the hands of developers. So we're below that, and like I said, bringing on another 60 carries a lot of water, and I know Kurt and Luke are working on another addition at the Bluffs right now too, so that'll help too.
I appreciate you bringing up the comment about trades. I think that is a challenge that sometimes is overlooked. And kudos to Ankeny and Waukee, but in the metro area, if trades have enough work down there, why drive 30 miles any direction, to work outside of, their geographic area? So that's another nut to crack, so to speak, in terms of trying to get more trades or people interested in the trades. So what do you think is a realistic, in the current state of production, given our trades that you see? Is 60 to 100 a realistic number if more help is provided? Or I think I'm just trying to level set what the expectations are, because if council was thinking, well, if we do this, we should get 125, and you just say, that ain't possible because you don't have enough HVAC, electricians, painters, framers, et cetera, what do you think? And this is an opinion. I know I'm not holding you to it, but what's a range that council should be thinking about and be realistic?
I'd like to get back up to 85 to 90 per year. One of the things that slips by the wayside that a lot of people overlook is half our population rent, and we have not been building multifamily. And as a result, our vacancy rates are lower than what I think even they were in 2018 when staff did a survey, and it was 0.5%. I think we're lower than that right now. We need to be opening up more multifamily. We need to be opening up more rental. Because there's a lot of people that aren't going to be here for 5 years or 7 years, that it doesn't make sense to own something, or they don't have the down payment, but yet they've got a good job, can pay rent. And those people live in our community too, and they need places to live.
Justin, I'd like to follow up on that. I completely agree with the need for more multifamily. But historically, in the last 10 years, we've made a conscious effort not to incentivize multifamily outside of the areas we can serve with SIRIDE and public services. So in your opinion, are there available options within our current footprint to do additional construction of multifamily?
We're building some down in the research park right now. I know Kurt and Luke are looking at opening some up at the Bluffs. And then we'll have some on the Greenbrier. That's about all I can think of.
Okay, thanks for that.
It's very challenging. There's not a lot of places that you could build an apartment building or rental units right now.
And then maybe we have to sort of shift our philosophy on this. I don't know.
Two more quick questions. One is price points. We have as a goal at multiple, at various price points. Can you just comment on terms of what you would envision or what Dean talked about in the developer community here in Ames? Because we understand that it's nice to build north of 50, 500,000, 7,500. Yeah, wouldn't that be wonderful? 750,000. But we're interested in a variety of different ones to meet multiple, young professionals. Can you talk about that just briefly in terms of what you've talked about in-house as well as with other?
Yep. So I think most recently to the Greenbrier and the questions that Kelly asked on behalf of the council, we had 6 different price points that we had identified. So it was apartments, townhomes, small lots like the smart home lots that we did on West Ames. So that was 43 feet. Then we had some smaller, a little bit bigger than that, but still a single family detached home that was 62 feet in width. And then we had some more traditional at the 75 to 80. And then we had our executive level lots at 100 linear feet.
Mm-hmm. And just so when you talk about those ballparks, you're talking, and I know that entry level is not entry levels from 10, 15 years ago. You're talking, just ranges you're talking about.
I'm trying to think where Destiny has been pricing theirs, and we've seen apartments are in the neighborhood of a couple $100,000 per unit for costs, and then you get to a townhome, they're in the neighborhood of 350 to 400, and then some of the smaller smart homes that Destiny did, they were in the low 3s before. They're probably 3.5 right now. And I think they've been in the low 4s on the 62-foot lots that we had, because we just brought on 6 of those in the first edition at Sunset Ridge North. The 75 to 80-foot lots have been right around 85 to 90,000. And then you get above 100 feet and you're backing up to trees and have a lot more amenities. Those are starting at 200 and
The
going
lot
up from
price,
there.
you're saying. The lot price.
That's the lot. I'm sorry, lot price.
Yeah.
So you're looking at $1 million home there.
Yeah.
Let's see, the 75 to 80-foot lot, you're probably in the neighborhood of a $550,000 to $600,000 home.
That's very helpful. So, and last question, there's more nationally some trends of people coming in and building single-family homes to rent. Is that something that is a possibility or being considered in Ames?
We haven't seen anybody
Asking about it.
on a national level coming into our market and looking at that.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Justin. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to offer feedback, comments tonight? All right, we'll close public comment. So
Mayor,
if
if I could just chime in on the build to rent model, which is pretty substantial nationally right now in single family home product. I haven't recently, but at times I have had builders contact me about where's 20 acres that I can build 150 rental townhomes or something like that. Generally, that didn't exist as a land inventory that was in the city. So we've had a couple of different people probably over the last 5 to 6 years ask for that. We had no land that was available for something like that. So they could have moved on and called Hunziker or Friedrich and tried to pursue that more. I don't know if they did or not. So I think there just wasn't land for anybody to do that. I think Hayden's Preserve. So what's unique, Hayden's Preserve currently is owned by someone from out of the community, ties to a lot of different places. They had on and off again, talked about a different kinds of housing, maybe a version of at least a component of for rent, single family within that. None of that was certain, but I think they just had a little different idea about what the mix would be at Hayden's Preserve.
And that's an interesting point, John. And one of the things I think we should note is that the developers that are making these proposals are ones that have been in our community for a very long time. And I think we should be recognizing the contribution these developers have made. And I think that that's a factor, that these developers have skin in the game, and they have historically been very committed to the community. I think that's important to note.
So we're not anticipating making a decision tonight. So what specifically does staff need? And is additional information that council would like from, staff questions they might have that like to be answered so we can keep this conversation moving? Brahma?
Well, I guess I just had the question about what other infrastructure needs we see with Plan 2040 and other areas that might be developed. Are there any big things we should be thinking about in terms of other infrastructure needs? And I don't mean right this instant, but I mean, maybe you could
I
bring
can
that.
probably answer the majority of that. So I think, again, if you look at what's developable now with the amount of resources that have already been committed or could be extended, like on this diagram, the areas to the south, so we put a sanitary sewer line in, there's 2 gravel roads down there. At some point, those have to be improved, but we are not going to do that until there's a development project that's related to that. We would not just go pave rural roads, right? So to the southeast, there really isn't much left to do. Someday there's going to be some substantial costs. There's going to be more costs down there. Out west, there's some activity on the County Line Road area. I think in the MPO plan, there's some road improvements shown for Lincoln Way that are MPO level projects. There's paving of County Line Road potentially as that develops. You've already put the sewer lines in to serve that area. So if you jump County Line Road and go into Boone, those lines would just get extended with development. You wouldn't do anything else on your own right now. The Xenia water issue, there's part of the discussions that Water's having with Xenia is to make sure they can actually provide the service they said they could provide in Boone. We can't do a whole lot there. It's their territory. There's some negotiations about assistance there on our side, related then also to the territory buyouts that would benefit us to the north. And then up north, this is really the extent of our growth plan. So everything you see here is really it. And then out east, again, you just have where the regional mall area is on 13th Street. There's just not really a project there now. You have that industrial project that's under construction. So we have water, sewer, a paved street on 13th out to there. There isn't anything else necessarily looming immediately out there. Again, someday road widenings, paving of gravel roads out there would come up, but not immediately.
Thank you. That's helpful. And so whether or not we do anything this evening, the Xenia water is being negotiated by being renegotiated by staff anyway. So that's already in progress.
Correct.
So then I guess I'm curious to know more about the concept of paying for oversizing and some pioneer infrastructure. And I guess, so how do we proceed then in terms of understanding how that might affect future CIPs? Is that something we need to ask staff to bring back to us?
Well, we could, you have to tell us, are you assuming that we try to give something to every one of the developers? That's not negative. I mean, you try to do that. We can sit down with each of them separately and kind of find out. I appreciate Justin saying we probably can't give it all to them, but there are major amounts we can make a difference on. But each one is different. One might need the rural water buyout and one might need oversizing. So we could try to put together a package for each one of them. And then we could come back and maybe get an idea how that'll affect the budget itself.
I mean, I guess I would be curious to see that, because I mean, it seems like staff, you already outlined a few ideas for things that,
Yeah,
So I think,
that
so
you
yes, I
thought
mean, we
were-
could talk about just this table, right? This is staff's attempt to categorize the requests. There's variations of this under council's interpretation of Pioneer and oversizing. We, in the next page, described our general approach. Council could change this project list, which then changes the budget and the CIP, right? So I think this alone, which is really option 1 and option 2, I believe in the report. Option 1 was oversizing only. That's not a tremendous amount of money. Option 2 starts to step that up meaningfully.
what I'd like to put together for is a package that has the oversizing, the Pioneer infrastructure, and the $2.7 million that we can,
Yes.
how will that help? We got to give a little bit to everybody. I don't know if it's going to keep them all satisfied rather than concentrate on the top 2, but we can try to package those together and see what we can do.
And so that's not something you'd need a motion for, or you would want?
Well, if you want us to continue with that.
Let's come back. Just
Okay.
pause for 1 second. So I guess I probably should comment on this because apparently we didn't get into this very far. I think as you look at this, it kind of went to maybe Tim's original comment, maybe a little bit of Amber. This was designed as not targeted to any one project.
Mhm.
This was an agnostic table of these are major infrastructure projects for the city to invest in. Any one of those, other than the slip lining, may not cause any one project to actually be developable. They're just a pure, if we did this, this would make sense within our city's infrastructure plan. So it doesn't necessarily help or benefit any one project targeted anyways. But getting back to dollar amount and programming, first we need to understand your appetite for what's even on the list. And then as we have in there discussion of ARPA funds, does ARPA fill this pot? Is that a different element that's not included in this? Like there's more here we need to understand as staff before we can really program a CIP probably for this. If that's where you were going, is what would we
Well,
need to propose
Just
as
what's
a
the next
CIP?
step? Yeah, when does this come back to us, or when
Well,
yeah.
Again, are you
That's kind of my
assuming we offer a little bit to every one of the developments?
I mean, I kind of like the agnostic table myself,
No.
but I don't know. I mean, so I guess you could go.
I think we need to see what's possible too, right? Like in a perfect world, if we did all of this, what does a timeline look like?
Mm.
That's
I
a
mean,
separate.
Exactly.
that to me is if we're hoping to gain additional housing units in this 1 to 3 year time frame, we also need to know the time frame for putting in this infrastructure and how quickly the city can move on it, because we may not be able to move as quickly as they might like. And
Yep.
how can we
We'll have to
expedite things
prioritize
on our
those.
end?
We'll have to prioritize this. We will. That's what we'll have to talk about. When they're ready and when we can get ready. That's why I think doing the slip lining right away is very important to do.
Right, but how soon are we going to know what's possible to do in whatever 1 to 3 years?
You mean in terms of what the city is or what the developer
Yeah,
should do?
if we're going to be responsible for, or if we are willing to take on the responsibility for some of this Pioneer infrastructure and oversizing.
Well, we'll have to put that together with the CIP, what you're willing to do, not only timing, but cost. Yeah.
Right, but if we're going to vote to put it in this year's CIP, we need to see it
soon.
soon, is my point. Okay.
I understand that.
Okay.
So I mean, without like programming the real projects, we try to give you that sense of the investment in the next 3 years. So this table says it's about $6 million of developer asks to set everybody up to move through their initial phases of development, right? So there is a big number for the next 3 years. It hits multiple funds, so it's not just one. Staff getting a little more direction on types of activities they want to address in the next 3 years, or some financial direction helps us actually put a package together, because we didn't really propose a package of how to do anything. We just gave you a lot of information.
Yeah.
Well, I think you can let us move ahead. We can bring back something. Again, you're going to have to package it with the CIP with the rest of the projects and see, you want to add these on, which year you want to add, you want to take something off the list. So it's got to be tied to your final decisions in January, I think.
I have a question to follow up on Amber's. I think her question on timing was really good. is it possible that if we took on a more aggressive approach, we might have to bring in some additional assistance on engineering or planning in order to see the projects move aggressively? I recognize we have a finite number of people now, but I don't want our human resources to be an artificial constraint on some of these projects moving forward. Is that a possibility?
So
Maybe
for
Kristen?
planning, there's no additional staffing needed. As with all public works projects, from when I talk to them, it's what's in the CIP. If there's things beyond that, they have to look at other resources, which we
hire
contract
outside
out all the
engineers
time.
Yeah.
for Projects.
Yeah, we contract engineering services all the time.
So in the road, I'm looking at table 1, your prescient. Road construction, geo bonds. So every year we spend so many dollars
Right.
on road construction.
Correct.
Is it possible that we could just reprioritize or just delay 1 or 2 projects and slip something else in?
It's very possible. That's why you're going to have to remind yourselves what those projects are, what you promised the
Mhm.
people. And some people might be glad that we're not in their neighborhoods doing those projects, right? But you're going to have to decide. You either add to the list, you add on our base. We've been very careful to have a base amount each year for roads. So you can either add to that, or you can help us cut out some of those projects or delay them. That will be the art that we'll have to deal with.
And then how does rural water buyout work? Can you remind us? And is it just
Well, these happen to do with Xenia.
right?
And fortunately, we both won something from each other now. I think Xenia wants to buy more water from us, and therefore we're in a position to ask for something in return. And one of them is changing the way they price the rural buyout. So I think we're going to.
Those, as it's happened previously, the developer pays per area of a final plat. So as far as I know, they're not writing off the whole 100-acre development with one check on day one. They're paying for the area that they're actually going to build on, and then they incrementally pay for those as it goes.
So if the city does a rural water buyout, it'd be the same kind of a structure, and that water, a check just gets cut from the water utility? Is that how?
No, the developer will pay for it. We're going to reduce the cost of the developer. Right now, these numbers are based on a more conservative number. The way we're paid
So-
for it now, we're going to try to get a better price for them if they will.
So we would reimburse the developer?
So if you flip the model and say that we're going to take on the burden of the territory buyout,
Uh-huh.
then yeah, the water fund would have to pay for that. We would have to budget.
I was just curious how it was.
That's a different thing. Then you're extending, we're trying to reduce the cost to them. Not assume the cost from that. That's actually a more expensive option for the city.
So in this chart,
So this chart assumes we take on the buyout because that's what the developers asked for. So the
Right.
the $1.4 million is if we, the city, took on all the ask of territory buyouts that was in their request.
and I was just asking how that, I was trying to understand how that worked actually. So it's a check gets cut.
That's how it's worked. My understanding previously is you pay by final plat.
And the 1.8 million sewer, that's the big one that goes across Hayden's Preserve. Is that right?
And the slip line,
Heritage Foundation property and
Well- slip line and east-west sewer.
So those are costs. So we'll have to tell you either you reduce something in the CIP, or we'll tell you it all affects your actual fees, your rates. So we'll have to tell you what that means in the way of rate customers. They pay property taxes, they pay water fees and sewer fees.
And then what this table illustrates is there's a difference in the top of waiving collection of things you've already spent money on. So the reimbursement side of it versus new costs, which is the bottom half of that table. But it adds up as a cost to the city somehow if we take on these obligations as requested.
is it, this may be impossible to do. Is it potentially possible to do a chart and just say that if this, and this is done in the next year or two, we could see this many lots potentially come on or houses built? I'm trying to, if we're trying to accelerate the availability of lots and housing, and trying to think where we can get the biggest bang for our buck and really get things jump started. Is that Does that make sense in terms of you be working with the developers and saying if, like, for example, the slip line Justin mentioned, if that went in, it would potentially open up some of these, but then there's going to be some other costs associated with that. And then the next one might be, I don't know, it could be Dank Bar, it could be whatever the point, or Auburn Trail. I'm just trying to think is that if we could then see that, oh, well, if we're investing this money or reprioritizing this, that this is going to help, which.
So I, of my own interpretation of what everybody has told me and my understanding of how things works, that's what this table does. So on the right side, years 1 through 3, that equals that $6.2 million investment. If you listen to what Justin said, getting to 100 homes will be a year is going to be difficult without another entity building homes beyond what we have today. That supports the average development of 111 homes a year. So that's,
Yeah, remember it's 325, I think.
yeah, total's 325. So,
And it's
so I think I'm answering that question by saying if you invested $6.3 million, you're setting up over the next 3 years the production of 325 homes. Now there's going to be more after that. Like there's more reward after the first 325, but that's all you reasonably can expect with the ecosystem that we currently have in the city for home production. This is only single family. This doesn't deal with multifamily or commercial, but just the single family home production.
Yeah.
Does that get to what you're asking? There's be another way to portray it, but that
Yeah,
on,
no,
on
I appreciate
broad
that.
terms does that.
You have to set up the development, you have some of those initial costs, but they're going to be available for the next 3 or 4 years after the first 3.
I think this table was really illustrative of there's a huge hump at the beginning
Right.
for not a ton of reward. And then the model flips after that, where you spend a lot less and you get way more reward after that initial investment.
We haven't discussed TIF much tonight, but I'd like to come back to that. But Steve, is there anything we can do tonight with respect to the first 3 of the options you've given us in terms of direction?
No, I don't think so. Unless you want to give me direction. I don't want you to have to make any decisions right now. I think we have to get with the developers individually, and each one of them may want something different, and see if we can package together something that maybe not all they want, but it'll be a substantial amount.
Well, that's what I'm trying to tease out. So is there direction from council to staff that you would need in order to meaningfully engage with that? Would you want direction that we're supportive of 1 through 3, for example?
Okay, I don't want you to make that decision, but if you want to say that, that's,
I'm just curious, and I don't know what council's
I
appetite
think
is.
that's what I'll start working on first.
And I mean, it doesn't commit us to this. It commits us to having conversations. Let me just sort of take the temperature. I would move that we direct staff to engage developers with respect to options 1 through 3 as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Yeah. So thank you. Is there, what is what's the expectation? What would be the end result of that then? What are you hoping to accomplish?
I want to build houses.
Well,
But can I just ask that a little bit differently, Mayor? So 1, 2, and 3, you need more direction than that,
Yeah.
because 3 is how to use ARPA funds. It's not, you can't just say do those 3 things, because it's different ways to pay for the same thing.
Well, and I'm not trying, so I hope my motion was clear,
Right.
that I'm not trying to micromanage this. I'm trying to allow staff the
Let's put
flexibility.
together a package.
Yeah, but
Just do
but
what
under
you
the
were
ARPA
gonna
funds,
do.
we
That's what
presented
talking
2 different
about.
choices, right? The ARPA funds could backfill city cost, or it could be additive. I think that's the key thing in options 1, 2, and 3. Because each option 1 only pays for a part of the infrastructure, 2 pays
That's
for
how
a
you're
different
asking
part,
about
and
then,
3 pays for the same thing a different way. It's not additive as written,
Um,
right? Like that's, I think what,
I think you should just allow us to look at 1 through 3, and then you'll decide what that means.
well, or there's even 4. And the point is there anything that council is not supportive of staff exploring
Well,
in meeting with developers, right?
yeah, I guess what Kelly's asking, if you don't want us to use the ARPA funds
Take number 2
to the
off.
benefit
Right.
of, this sounds bad, but to the developer, we would use it to pay for the Pioneer infrastructure. Let's say that we're agreeing to pay 100%.
It's like-
You could take that and we could pay for it, or you could say the city's going to pay for that separately, and we're going to add to the pot of money for incentives of 2.7. Do you
I mean,
understand?
You're just shuffling. It's all the same thing, though.
But
Uh,
but it may be that certain types of tools are needed in certain projects.
I understand.
I was trying to be clear that I would like to see those those conversations happen with the development. I didn't know what you need in terms of direction from us. So
What go ahead, you speak. I don't think there was a motion necessary. They're going to do it. But the point is, the motion's on the floor and has been seconded, so.
But my understanding of the motion was just to direct staff to do what it sounded like they were going to do anyway.
That's what
Right.
which was
Yeah.
assumed.
that's why I asked Steve for whether a motion was needed. If
And
I'm not making a motion just to make a motion, I'm asking it for a specific reason.
Well, he said no.
No, he said yes. I'll make this easy. If staff doesn't need a motion to do this, then I'll withdraw my motion. That's easy.
That's safe because you won't get mad at us if we don't do what you want, right? So
I,
like
I
that.
think we should look at what option 1, 2, and 3 really
Bring us
are.
a lot of different options for packaging various
Yeah, that's
things
right.
in different ways, and we can make a
you go.
decision on how we think
Kel-
it's best to implement the various requests given the funds that are available.
Kelly just asked, do you want the 2.7 to be for the city payment of it or to the developers additional incentive? And maybe look at it both ways and see what the difference is, right?
Is your motion, you can keep your motion or you're going to?
No, I'll withdraw the motion. It sounds like it's futile. But I would like to discuss the TIF because we haven't had any discussion about that. So maybe there's consensus in theory about options 1 through 3. We haven't had any discussion about TIF. And so this would be new for us. And Kelly, could you speak a little more about the pros and cons about TIF for incentivizing housing?
So if we go this route, there's a specific section in urban renewal law that's going to apply that we've never had to deal with before. So when you create an urban renewal area on a green field and call it for economic development purposes, it sets different set of standards that apply to the situations. We've done TIF for industrial, commercial, potentially for infill areas, which are different than this. We are going to live within parameters that the incentive can only match a cost of public infrastructure, whether the city does the work or whether you did a rebate back to a developer. That's a new level of limitation that we haven't had to deal with. And that's specifically to this type of a situation for residential development in greenfields. What we proposed here was the concept of approximating the cost to the city of the current abatement program and translating that to TIF. There's a lot of variations here. So we structured this as saying, well, our current system costs the city a certain amount for the ownership incentive. If you're willing to use that same amount of incentive but deploy it towards the developer rather than the home buyer, it's a similar cost to the city, but the developer reaps the reward of the other taxes beyond ours that would go to them in the TIF. Now, what's not accounted for in here is what I mentioned earlier was that as you do economic development in greenfields for residential projects, you trigger a mandatory low and moderate income set aside amount, and it's roughly 40% of the money that you're putting towards infrastructure has to be diverted to LMI as a set aside to be spent on affordable housing in the community. It could be in the project, you could use it to do things in a project, or you could spend it in other places in the city. So there's more total cost than what's presented here. This was just about what a developer may benefit as. So there's a lot more to go through here if you go down that route. I would say this is why most cities don't do this. They don't probably want to generate the LMI funds as an additional obligation just to build up a balance of LMI. So they might do it if they know there's a low income project that they can divert that fund to directly. Maybe it's the project itself. You could do that directly within the project. I think that's generally why you're not seeing most cities do it this way, is they are not interested in that LMI set aside because it's an additional cost or additional diversion of taxes to that specific purpose. And then in Story County, we're a little worse off than most. The way the state formula is constructed, it's based on the percentage of people in your county that are low and moderate income.
Oh,
So that's why it's almost 40. It's probably about 40% in Story County. It would be more in the mid 20s in most average counties in Iowa or lower. So because of our student population, so many are in poverty because of their students. Our percentage of LMI is much, much higher than most cities see. So we would get penalized a little bit in having a much higher set aside than most places.
That's a very helpful overview.
Excuse me, I guess the real question is, in direction, do you want us to come with packages that yield $9.9 million, give them exactly what they want? Is that, you know what I'm saying? It could be less. Are you expect us to come up with a combination of all four options or whatever to come up with 9.9 million?
We were just discussing the TIF concept.
What was that again?
We were just discussing the TIF concept, not total incentive that
No,
we
I think
want to
that-
give to
No, I'm going back. I'm going back.
Oh, I thought we were going to get maybe several different options or packages.
Up to different percentages of what they're asking for each one?
Up to the full, I thought,
Oh, okay.
just to see.
Can I just to finish this train of thought on TIF?
And I'd like to move on to the next item very soon too. So go ahead, Tim.
I mean, I don't know when else we're going to talk about this.
Well, that was my last question I'm going to ask staff is when is this going to come back to us to continue the conversation? What was the anticipated timeline? Because we don't want this to be 2, 3, 4 months on the road. But your question was specifically about TIF or about?
Yeah, I just want just a moment more on TIF. Have the developers expressed an interest in TIF? I mean, this is on our report for a reason. I assume there was some level of interest, but could you articulate that?
Yeah, it was one of the questions you had back to the developers. So some of them responded to that a little bit, but a few of them did say specifically end the abatement program for their subdivision and give TIF to the developer instead of the abatement. The rationale is it's in their pocket. It facilitates their operations to build versus going to the home buyer, which is harder to monetize on their part. So they said in their responses, why go away? Your question was, why not abatement? Why TIF? They didn't see an acceleration of demand, I guess. So they were looking at another way to do it. And then where it gets really murky and some of the requests is like, we're not doing a full pro forma gap analysis. I don't even know if that's possible to do. Some said it was a direct request to close a financial gap. Some suggested maybe it was a way to finance some of the infrastructure that's on the list. So it's kind of a gray area exactly how TIF would be used or whether it was how exactly it was calculated in terms of benefit to the developer. So no one came out and said, this is what I'm asking for directly in TIF. So that's why we made this version based on the abatement program.
So and that's a good answer. I just don't know to what degree the TIF needs to be and should be a part of the conversation with developers.
I don't know that we have a great feel for that either because we didn't get very detailed responses in regards to that.
It's hard to calculate that.
Well,
what the value is.
let me summarize my sense is. My sense is council is very supportive of keeping this conversation going and exploring all different options. Is that correct?
Yes.
And also times of the essence, we want to keep this conversation going, correct?
Yes.
So what do you think is
Well,
reasonable to?
To be fair to staff, I'm not prepared to say that tonight, but I'm not going to wait 6 weeks to tell you what it is. But we have to put a game plan together and see what it'll be. I understand you want it as soon as possible.
Yeah,
But if I tell you 3 weeks or 2 months, I want to make sure we can meet it. There's a lot of work here, especially if we're going to start looking at other parts of the city to see what qualifies in our plan. So.
What?
Other parts of the city, he said there weren't any.
What's that?
We will make sure on that too. But anyway, again, I would emphasize we move ahead with this slipping of the line and get that quick as possible. Can't do it tonight, but maybe at a future meeting, direct us to do that.
Could that be on in 2 weeks or 4 weeks in terms of
The slip line issue.
the
Absolutely.
slip line?
It depends. We have a workshop on next Tuesday, or it'll be 2 weeks from today.
Okay, all right.
Say that again, Steve, about the workshop.
There is a
Never mind.
workshop next Tuesday.
If there was a workshop. Right now, it's none scheduled.
Okay.
All right, is there anything else? Any other questions? You're clear on where we're headed?
Yeah, it's a challenging and difficult, complex issue. So we'll try to give you as much information as we can, number of options. You're going to be thinking, again, who you want to give it to, how much you want to give, and the timing is going to be very important.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks for coming in, Kelly.
Yes.
Move on. Item 26, discussion of fire station number 2 relocation.
Well, today we didn't go any depth on the actual fire station. You know, out of all the projects we've been discussing, 5 or 6 have been mentioned in addition to the CIP projects we have. One of them is the fire station relocation of 2. This is the only one that has a timing issue. As you know, we have to get a ballot on the ballot issue by passing an ordinance by September 18th. So first of all, we need to know, does the council want us to try to move ahead to put that on the ballot for the 18th for the vote in November? Or do you want to wait until the next year? That's all we want to do here. If you say to keep moving, we'll be back next week with a lot more information for you and the public about what the project's going to cost, justify the square footage and the cost, and also have information on our estimate on what the property tax implications would be. But we don't want to move to that unless you have to make the first decision. I think there was I didn't get any consensus on whether you wanted to move ahead for the November vote this year or the next year for Fire Station 2 relocation. That's all we need right now for some direction from you.
My concern with moving it to the November 2025 ballot is that there is not sufficient time to educate the public. I'm concerned that we don't have any, I don't have any sense that any of the races will be contested. I think this will be extremely low turnout election, and people aren't incentivized to pay attention. And I just don't think there's enough time to adequately inform the public about the merits of this.
I agree.
Anita?
You motion, I guess.
Yeah, go ahead. Rachel, have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think we need some more time to tell the public.
Gloria, do you have anything you want to add?
I agree with Tim on the concern about low turnouts at the election. I don't agree about the need for more education of the public. This has been on our agendas, I think, for the last 4 years. And we had a public meeting with the neighborhood that was going to be impacted by the new location, I think 1.5 years or 2 years ago. So I feel like we've done enough outreach on it, but I don't think there are going to be a lot of people showing up at the polls to actually vote on it, which concerns me.
And I certainly agree with you, Gloria, that we've done outreach to the people who are affected, but the entire community is the one who's voting on this. And my guess is you couldn't find anyone. You ask 100 people, I bet no one knows this is even a consideration.
Yeah, I agree. Just because it's been on our agenda, it doesn't always mean that the public is catching those things necessarily.
Well, it has been in the newspaper multiple times, both Iowa State and the city of Ames. I feel like 4 years is a long time to be discussing the same project, but I'm not going to hold out to put this on the ballot because I do think Tim's right that we would not get enough people weighing in with their votes, which I think is more important to me at this point.
So I would move that we address this in 2026 rather than 2025.
I would second.
Do you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I mean, I agree with Gloria. I think we have been talking about this for a long time, and it is a priority for us. It's a priority for the fire department, and I think it's important that I think we've shown that it's important over the last several years in doing it. And so I understand everyone's reasoning for not wanting to put it on the ballot this year, but I also, I guess, am not 100% convinced that there's a significant difference between doing it now or doing it next year, other than us saying it's been a priority for 4 years, but we're going to wait a whole nother year for us to do anything on it. I think educating the public on a fire station too is a relatively simple task. It's a fire station. I think you can justify a need. You can show people the impact in a relatively short amount of time. People have very short attention spans, and I think sometimes the longer you drag things out, it doesn't pay off in the end. So
Our residents have shown a tremendous capacity to dig in on projects. We've had bond measures fail. And we've added an environmental aspect of this firehouse project that will add $1 million roughly to the project. 2 million.
It's just under, yeah, there's some square footage addition and then geothermal, the actual equipment.
So, I mean, I think the dichotomy is we're in a silo here. There's how many people in the public are here tonight except for our staff? Very few people and the media. And so I think our population isn't paying attention, and I don't think this is good governance on our part to try to run something through with such short notice.
So 2 quick questions. How much does it cost to put an item on the ballot? And second is, can you do it twice without changing the thing you're asking for? Like,
sure.
If we did it this year and it was like voted down, can we do it again next year? And what's the cost of doing that?
Mark, we could use the same ballot measure if it's defeated this year for next year.
Can it be exactly the same?
I think you can. I'd have to research it, honestly. I wasn't prepared for the question. I researched it, but I think you can.
I think philosophically, though, the public would ask, we said no once before. Why are you doing the same thing all over again? It's like,
Well, we had time to educate you in the meantime.
no,
I mean,
it's a good question. I'm just trying to think of that, I think of the public.
I just think bond issues are hard. I think they always face an uphill battle, right? So I think the more time we have to sell our story, the more helpful that is. Although, if it's cheap, I don't mind trying it this year too and see what happens. But that's my.
I mean, I
just
don't
think they're
I
uphill
think I'm
battles.
alone in my thinking, but we don't have a very engaged electorate. This is not a new phenomenon, right? We have low voter turnout consistently over many, many, many years. We have a new age of how people receive information and the amount of information they receive. And so I think when you draw things out for a very, very long period of time, it loses its impact. Look at the Story County bond measure that passed last year. Their marketing campaign or education piece that they did was very, very short, and it had no problem passing. And so I think sometimes you need to inundate people in a very short amount of time with information rather than dragging it out over many months. I'm not sure there's a benefit one way or the other.
The other thing
Amber, I think that's a really good point about the Story County bond measure. And I also would, as a counterpoint to that, I would point out how much and how long the effort was to pass the Healthy Life Center referendum, and it failed. So I don't know that the outreach is better because it's longer. And actually, the one thing I think we're sure of is that if we leave this for another year, the costs of construction will go up. And if it's already an expensive project and we add on to the cost of construction and then go to the public, it may be a harder sell than it should be.
And the other thing too is we have multiple items that we're interested in pursuing that may require bond issues. If this gets postponed for another year, then do you want to put 2 issues? You want to just probably do one. So you're going to delay whether it's the Ontario Park or you're going to do
What do we do if this gets voted down?
That's an excellent question.
I mean, if we're going to put this on the agenda, will council be willing to go out and put some shoe leather into this and actually door knock? I mean, if that's,
Well, you have to be careful. You cannot
yeah, we did that
advocate
before.
for it. You can certainly get educate them
We
people
did
what
this
the
with the
need
Healthy
for.
Life Center.
Yeah, it's the need you have to.
Yeah. So I door knocked hard on the Healthy Life Center, and if we're going to do this, then we have to have some buy-in from council to go out and promote this. I just think it's really tight time frame.
Okay, so go ahead.
Mayor, just if I may, since I've been fire chief, even prior, we've been talking about, the question I probably get the most when I go out and get opportunities to speak with our customers and neighborhood block parties on the radio, civic groups, it's when are you going to move station number 2 and when is station number 4 going to happen? Those are questions that the fire chief fields. Those are the top 2 questions I get most of the time. I'd also want to point out to council that the formal notification process, as we talk to our bond attorney, and I invite Corey to come up if you want to hear from Corey, but when we spoke with them earlier this week, there's 2 official notices that need to go out to the public. These are the official notices. One comes from the county auditor, and it's mailed to every registered voter, no less than 10 days, but no more than 20 days out from the vote. The city of Ames, that's the second notification that needs to take place. That has to be published no more than 4 days. Sorry, no less than 4 days, but no more than 20 days ahead of the vote. So there's 2 notifications that need to take place according to the law to notify the public formally of it. We've also been working with Susan and her team on an informal outreach. We've started filming videos. We have a good marketing plan set up to reach the community. And I do share in the current concerns that council has shared about costs going up. We're estimating $2026 right now. Working with our consultant, we'd be looking at $2027. So that and our response times can just continue to drop, and we know that moving the station would have a real impact on our response times to the entire community for emergency response times, in addition to a 5% or 5 percentage point increase for the 2040 plan as we move west, decreasing our response times out there as well.
I say we do it.
I'll withdraw my motion.
And are all the land issues for where we would be located, all of that is settled? And we know where we'll move and how to
No,
get all of this
Not yet.
in place?
We have no indication that it won't happen,
Okay.
but it's not going to probably be finalized by the time we put on the ballot.
Okay.
Well, I know it won't because it has to go to the Board of Regents in October as soon as we have. We don't think it's going to change, but
Okay.
obviously we don't get the land.
But we
cancel the
would know in
project.
October before the vote. Okay.
Is there a motion?
I would move that do I need to say schedule a
Right,
special
special
council meeting
to-
in order to place a referendum on the November 2025 ballot?
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so is your motion indicating that it's going to be on the ballot regardless?
I mean, we have to have a meeting to do.
No,
it.
I don't think you do. Wait,
Oh,
excuse me.
no?
I think you don't do that. We'll come back next meeting. We'll set up a workshop. We have to then show you the project itself, the cost, and Corey's got to tell you the cost
For the tax?
of the tax
increase?
implications. We're just asking you, if you didn't want to put on today, this week, tell us this year. Otherwise, we have to come back and educate you before you make a final decision to put
Okay,
it on. And
so
we have
my,
time to
so
do
my
that.
motion's fine then. Schedule a special meeting in order
16.
to discuss
To
placing the bond.
consider placing it
Yeah.
on there. Is
placing the question on the November ballot.
there a second?
Gloria did.
Or you did?
Aye.
Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I,
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
All right.
Whatever, we can try.
What's that?
I said we can try.
All right. Well, item number 27, resolution establishing energy update program.
Good evening. Tonight, joining me up here is Nolan, the Sustainability Coordinator, and Lane, our Energy Services Coordinator out of Electric. And take a couple minutes, we're going to run through a short presentation as council is aware, two of the big programs that we do within electric, one, and it's beyond electric, but we have the Climate Action Plan, under which we're trying to basically stop burning natural gas, greenhouse gases, and things like that. The other part is trying to encourage our customers to put more efficient equipment into their homes. How we accomplish both of these is through a process. Typically, we would do an energy audit. And when we do energy audits in people's homes and we say, here's some of the things you can work on. And when it comes down to things like furnaces, air conditioners, possibly putting on solar or doing other net zero ready types things, you mention the dollar amount and people go, whoa, 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 I can't afford something like that. So there's a program out there that we've been talking to you about that allows us to basically help our customers upfront some money to allow them to do some of those changes. And staff has been putting in quite some time. We're at a break point where to fund some of these projects, we have an excellent opportunity from money that USDA is willing to loan us for a number of years. And wanted Nolan to walk through the program. Then we'll talk about next steps, what we need from council tonight.
Thanks, Don. So as you mentioned, the USDA program is called the Rural Energy Savings Program. So it's a competitive application that we would submit, and the terms would be $15 million for 20 years at 0% interest. So we would send this application in if approved, and then if awarded by the USDA, at that point we would return to council for a decision on whether to accept that or not. So Don mentioned alignment with the Climate Action Plan. And priorities for establishing these energy efficiency retrofits. So when you're designing a retrofit program, you kind of have two problems that you need to solve. What's the structure of the program, and then how is it going to be funded? So for the funding, we've been talking about RESP. We sent in a letter of intent back in November. USDA responded in May and invited us to submit a full application by July. So we think that's a really good opportunity to fund a program. And then as far as the structure, we've been in discussion with the Iowa Economic Development Authority, and they share our priorities in this area, and they recognize that if a program like this could be successful in Ames, that other communities might adopt it throughout the state. So they funded a feasibility study that we've been working on since May with IEDA, Energy Efficiency Institute. We've engaged some local stakeholders in that feasibility study, and it's been extremely helpful in developing the program, putting together this RESP application, which is due tomorrow. So a little bit more on the structure. As Don mentioned, we would use these RESP dollars to invest in these projects listed under eligible improvements. So the city of Ames would act as a revolving fund where these funds are distributed, invested into these projects in people's homes. And then we would recover those investments through repayment on a fixed charge on their utility bill, and that'd be over 15 years. And through the RESP program, as we mentioned, at 0% interest, we would only need to charge, less than 1% in a program fee, and think of that like interest on these investments. So significant difference between what most people are financing their projects for currently, where they're looking at 7 to 10% in traditional financing for these projects. And most people do finance when they need to replace their HVAC system or do these types of projects. So the qualification for the program, we would only require that you be in good standing with the utility. So we wouldn't be checking credit. That would not be a barrier for participation that people would face under traditional financing. And then as far as operations, we would bring in a third-party program operator to handle the day-to-day operations of the program. There are companies that do this, and they could operate a program very efficiently. So from the customer perspective, there are 3 tracks or 3 ways that you could participate in the program. So number 1 is HVAC replacement. This is for folks whose air conditioner has gone out or it's very near its end of life, where you need a replacement urgently. It's a very streamlined process. It's just for heat pumps, where you would call a contractor that's already familiar. We've already engaged this contractor. They're familiar with the program, and they would look at your system, give you a quote. Here's how much the utility could invest in your project, and here's how much you would pay up front, and here's what the repayment fee would be on your bill over time. And then they could decide to get other quotes from other contractors or to move forward with the program. So you're still free to choose, which contractor you want to work with. And then the clean energy track would be pretty similar, just for solar panels. And then number 3 would look a little bit different. It would start with an energy audit. So kind of similar to our current process, but you're guided through the whole process from start to finish, where the energy audit identifies what are the most cost-effective measures that you could install in your home, what's eligible for the program, and then we help you find a contractor that's familiar to invest in, a broad array of different projects, whether that's insulation or air sealing, new doors, and then also HVAC, water heaters, lots of different options depending on what's best for that specific home. So digging into the financials a little bit, we have our budget kind of laid out on the left, and then I mentioned the revolving fund structure that we have mapped out on the right over there. So it would start with funds being drawn down from USDA. The city would use those funds to pay contractors directly for those projects, and then recover those investments through the customer payments that could then be reinvested into more projects. And then the program fee, that less than 1% that we'd be charging, we'd carve that out and use that to pay the program operator to operate the program. And then also use some electric utility funds to pay for those program operations as a direct investment in demand side management. So looking ahead, as I mentioned, we sent in the letter of intent. Tonight we're here asking for authorization to submit the application to USDA. We would hear back. We're not sure on the timeline. USDA has told us they're short-staffed right now. The program has been funded by the federal government, but we're not sure how long that would take to hear back from them. And then we would get a conditional commitment letter if the application is successful. At that point, we would return to council for a decision on whether to go ahead and accept the funding or not. And then from there, we would RFP, select a program operator, start engaging with contractors, really finalize all these details about the program, and then go ahead and launch it. So best case scenario, we're about a year or more out from actually launching the program. So
there is one key point. We are asking council tonight to authorize us to submit the application. As part of the application, we are requesting that council authorize us to actually establish the energy upgrade programs. In other words, we have to, on paper, create the program to say, now that we have this program, so I want to make sure that there are 2 parts to the council action form.
So what are the implications, Don, of establishing the energy upgrade program?
So really how we develop it and how we go forward with it, there's still a process. Let's say we get the funding, we would still go through a request for proposal process trying to find this provider. But by establishing the program itself, there's no risk, no direct impact to the utility, other than we're going to want to start working on it.
Would you be working on that regardless if you got the loan or not?
The short answer is no. Part of the key here is being able to tap into interest-free money, and that's what funds the program. We could do it with electric funds, but we have not studied, nor I think would it be wise to use our money when the federal government has a program to support this.
Questions?
I have a couple of just due diligence questions. Statewide, I saw some article on this that there was $25 million allocated to Iowa for this program. Is that your understanding that statewide, the whole state is 25?
Would be a different program. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So going back a little bit, when we first thought about this kind of a program, to apply for RESP money, you had to demonstrate that you were I'll say a rural community. And we went through that process. It was interesting in that by removing the students in our population, we're under 50,000, and that was a requirement at the federal government to have access to this money. And that's what we did. They came back and said, lo and behold, Ames, you qualify. And so this is unique money coming out of USDA set aside for this type of a program. I'm not familiar with the 25 million. So I'd have to look into that to see if we're talking the same bucket of money.
Okay. So let's say the Smiths do the whole home retrofit. And so it's an $18,050 project cost. And walk us through how long would they have to repay this loan?
I'm going to walk through the scenario. You want?
Sure. So the term limit is limited by the expected useful life. So we have a maximum of 15 years. But if you have measures such as a water heater or an EV charger that are less than that, which would be 10 to 13 years, then the limit of your repayment terms would be 80% of that expected useful life. So we don't want to have your repayment terms exceed what the expected useful life of that equipment is.
So let's say for the sake of discussion, we had the Smiths have a 10-year repayment, but he gets a job transfer, and after year one, they have to move. So they go to sell the house. How do we communicate to the prospective buyers that there's an obligation that the new buyers step into, that they will then have to repay this loan? How does that work?
Yeah, part of the process when a project goes through to finality, one of the steps we would do is file with the recorder a notice of this arrangement. So any new buyer that would come up in a search when you purchase a property, and any new buyer would be aware of that. And you could decide to pay the rest of it upfront, or negotiate with the seller an arrangement there. And then for renting, we would also sign an agreement with the property owner so that they would agree to let any prospective renters know about the arrangement as well.
And maybe I don't need to remind council, but we did that recently with a little project around the golf course, and I think it failed miserably. And we had all kinds of sophisticated people coming in saying they had no notice of the obligation, and it was in the abstract, and hopefully attorneys would flag this in their title opinions. But I want to be realistic that if our expectation is that the way in which we provide notice to people is through that same mechanism, I'm not sure why we get a different outcome. And I had a second sort of.
And I'll add, sorry.
Oh, please.
That would be before you go ahead with the purchase of the property. Once you've assumed ownership of the utility account, we would then notify you again through the utility channel of the.
Well, that would be a nice surprise then. Congratulations,
Yeah.
You now owe us $12,000. And we're going to have people, lined up down the street. And then my other question, just on a pragmatic level, this is all presuming that the contractor, everything goes swimmingly with the contractor. But there are some really terrible situations on the solar side. Contractors, we've had some fly-by-night operations coming in doing solar. So if we had a situation where there was a dispute with a contractor, how does that get resolved? And do we have a role in that contractor dispute? And what if they can't reach a resolution? Who gets paid? How does that work?
Sure, we would work closely with a program operator who would have experience operating similar programs and experience in those situations. And there would be a number of quality assurance steps along the way too. So we're assuring that based on the size of the array that you would experience a certain amount of savings. And that's an industry standard way to calculate those savings. And then quality assurance, where we're out there doing inspections anyway for interconnecting into our utility system. So we know that the system was installed properly and it was sized how you said it was going to be sized. So there are a number of checks along the way for quality assurance.
Yep. And that's on the solar specifically. On the HVAC project, what happens is basically we're training and working, the provider is training and working with the contractors and saying, here are the projects, here's how this project works. We're relying a lot on the contractors to help us sell this program. So for example, if you knew that your furnace was 15 years old and had it to be replaced, you're going to call up many of the contractors that are here in town, and they're going to say, okay, I can put again a furnace and an air conditioner into your home, and this is what it's going to cost you. Or there's a program that the city is doing. We can put in an air source heat pump. It costs a little bit more, but the city, based on the numbers, will pay 80% of that up front, and then that remaining, you pay some, so you've got some skin in the game, and then the remaining balance then is paid off over the next 10, 15 years on your electric bill at next to nothing on interest.
I
So-
think, excuse me, I think Tim may be asking, a contractor goes there and damages the house somehow. Is there liability insurance on the contractor to protect us, protect the city?
We would definitely have to have something like that in place, and we'll have to talk with our program administrator and make sure that that is
No,
definitely
it's
in
more
place.
than just the operations of it, but what damage we caused, disputes, how it affected the other part of their house or their other systems, those kind of things will arise. So liability insurance on the part of the installer.
On the installer, that is correct.
And maybe even on the contracted, the company we contract with for giving this information or such.
And then,
Make a note of that to put that in there.
We will definitely be putting that in there.
and I apologize, these questions are just designed to
No, they're good
to,
questions.
to
Mhm.
contemplate, what's the worst that could happen? That's why we're here, right? It's because we want this program to be successful. Corey provided us with an answer with respect to the impact on our bond rating, and it's still and maybe a little bit fuzzy for me. So, and I apologize, Corey took off.
What's your question?
So my question is, if we participate in this program, do the bond rating efforts calculate this into our bond rating? Because ultimately, if we're taking on this obligation, I just want to make sure we're not doing something that would inadvertently harm our overall bonding capacity.
He seems to say no.
Right. And coloring that a little bit more. So one of the things that the federal, that USDA requires is that there is collateral for the money that we borrow. And as it points out in there, we would be setting aside electric utility fund dollars to as collateral towards that money. So it would be an electric utility specific.
Well, yeah, he's also talking about the account. There's a receivable in there too, because
yes.
you have control over the people have to pay. You can turn off their electricity. So you have some clout over to make sure that the debt is paid. That people don't refuse to pay that fee.
So that would be some leverage. I didn't realize that was part of the deal. If they don't make their loan payments on this, then we turn the power off.
Well, that's what happens in utilities if people don't pay their bills.
But this is not just utilities. This is utilities plus the cost of this improvement.
And we don't use the word loan. It is not a loan to the customer.
By the
We
way,
are.
no one's required
is
to
it?
do this. No
It's
one's, Tim, no one's required to do this. So we have to explain what's here and they don't have to participate.
I understand, but what do we call it?
It's a utility investment, like just how like we would invest in any other kind of infrastructure. It's just limited to one account, one utility account. So it's attached to the meter at the property. They're repaying for that over the term that we mentioned.
I apologize. I am a country lawyer. It seems to me that if the people have to pay the money back, we would call that a loan.
The main distinction is that it doesn't go with you if you leave, like we talked about, that it stays with the.
It would stay with the residents, with the property.
Well, then it just shifts. Then it just shifts to the next people, and then they have the loan. I mean,
Investment.
I mean, seriously, I just want to be straight with people and not use clever terms to. It's a loan. It clearly is a loan. They have to pay the money back.
Fine,
But okay. What's the point?
you're right.
The point is that we use accurate language with our community. That's the point.
No, I meant did they answer the question for you?
Well, I don't know how to answer that question. I think it was very of an odd answer. No respect on.
Well, why is it the program, the federal program doesn't allow us to call it a loan? Is that what we're saying?
The underwriting too is another distinction where you're not underwriting, checking credit, going through that process.
So we're just trying to adhere to those requirements. If you feel uncomfortable for it, with
if
this,
you're not in
don't do the
favor of it,
project.
you can
vote
vote
against it.
down.
Well, I'm asking questions that I think that if we're going to ask people to participate in this, I think this is part of our job as council to do our due diligence. Did we just not go through this with the golf course?
Well, your point is well taken.
Well
In terms
taken.
of is if when the house is sold, how is notice somehow given in advance? And but we're out of it. The property owner, maybe it's something that we alert all the local real estate agents that should be something that they should have divulged in some kind of a disclosure form. Do you have a energy or an utility investment, AKA loan, on
We went over this. We would agree with what you're saying, Tim, especially with the experience we have. We're just describing how the program works right now. And if you want to feel uncomfortable with it, then we won't do it. If the council doesn't want to do it.
I'm just trying to look at all the angles and
I think
how
you're
this
right.
works in practice.
I think you're right. You know what's going to happen. Some people are going to get upset because they're not going to know that obligation runs with the house. Then buy it. It's going to happen.
All right. Other questions?
I have a question about the Section 106 review that is highlighted on attachment 1 of the multi-tier action environmental compliance agreement. I may be wrong about this, and Steve, maybe you can correct me if I am, but it seems to me that Section 106 was what was causing problems for us in using CDBG funds to do our sewer project in Oak to Riverside. And the State Historic Preservation Office required that we survey homes in a neighborhood that was not a historic district, just because they were old and they could be impacted by the work that the city was doing using federal funds on the sewer project in the roadway. And so when I see the highlighted Section 106 on this attachment 1, my question is, are we likely to run into some sort of similar problem because we're dealing with old homes? And those old homes have not necessarily been designated as historic, but the State Preservation Office may insist that we do surveys of those homes to determine whether or not they are historic before we can use funds on the building envelope improvements or the lighting or the on-off grid renewable energy systems that we might want to employ.
Gloria, is that a question or just more or less bringing up to the point that that's a concern?
Yeah, it's a question. Is it something that's likely to occur again? And am I right that that was a Section 106 issue that impeded our ability to move quickly with our project previously?
Kelly?
Yeah. So it was, it was for the water and sewer projects in Oak Riverside because of the excavation. We got stuck with an archaeological review that we weren't expecting. But yes, so anytime you do rehab with federal money, 106 consultation could come into play. When I'm looking at this list, a lot of these should be exempt and not trigger some kind of survey, but it is theoretically possible that if you were doing exterior changes to the building, you may trigger an assessment and a survey and then have to have SHPO agree or disagree with you about whether you're impacting the historic character. But typically maintenance, replacement of equipment would be exempt. You wouldn't have to worry about any kind of specific review. So potentially, but weatherization should not trigger any kind of historic requirements. Maintenance should not. It's only if you're altering, if you changed out the window openings or something like that, you're going to trigger a review. But a lot of these other things should be exempt through the process. But technically, you're still going through the process.
Mm-hmm. That answer your question, Gloria?
That was question 1. The second part of that question is, as we develop an implementation program, will we be taking into account the potential to have that sort of Section 106 requirement? And have we thought about what we would do to ensure that we're ready to handle those kinds of surveys that might be required?
I'm going to guess that we need to talk to USDA about what the expectation is to help guide us on setting that up in the implementation program. So I haven't personally looked at that with electric, but I think USDA would have to give us the guidance on what they expect.
we're submitting a.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we'll open up public comment. Does anyone want to address council on this topic tonight? All right, we'll close public input. Any further questions?
So we're submitting an application, correct? You said before, right?
That is correct.
It has to come back for final approval for the council for award. So if you have some additional, I forgot, there's a deadline here that has to be in?
Tomorrow.
That's right. So what you could do is, I guess, you could submit it. We can try to answer all your questions and make you more comfortable before you make the final decision. If you've got some information you really need to have before you make a final decision on this, I guess we could, after we give it to you, we can decide. If you feel uncomfortable.
All right, is there a motion?
I would move alternative one, approve establishing an energy upgrade program and authorizing staff to submit a federal loan application for the USDA Rural Energy Savings Program in the amount up to $15 million.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Aye.
Aye.
Barton.
Nay.
Junk.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Edie Hansen.
Aye.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I presume that is a letter sitting in my office for me to sign.
There's a few things for you to sign, yes. Thank you.
A few things.
Few things.
I'm
It's
sorry.
a government.
I can sign one. I'm sorry. I'm just kidding.
Thank you.
All right, moving to item number 28, resolution approving a request from Dan Foss to waive sidewalk installation requirement at 2800 East 13th.
Hello, this is a fairly unique thing. You haven't looked at something like this before. So if you're not familiar with this, Dan Foss received a grant from the state to build a new daycare facility. They wouldn't operate it. They have an operator for that. The project's had a lot of twists and turns. It was intended to be built on a separate property, but that deal fell through. So Dan Foss has agreed to place the structure on the same piece of land that their plant is already on. Our code requires that when a new principal building is built, you must install missing infrastructure. In this case, there's no sidewalks on 13th Street, and it triggered a requirement there. As we looked at this with Public Works, we have an option that is being presented to you because of the uniqueness of the right-of-way, which is that it's in relation to an interchange and a divided arterial street that was never designed for a sidewalk to be built. Public Works does not have a feasible way for Dan Foss to produce a usable piece of infrastructure at this time because there's no crossings, there's nothing that fits there. So in light of Public Works' view of the conditions of the right-of-way, major influence here is the interchange. This would probably not happen anywhere else in the city because of the interchange right-of-way. We're supporting Dan Foss's request that for this project, the daycare only, essentially the requirement for the sidewalk is waived. It could be triggered again in the future with future Dan Foss improvements. If the city prioritized a project, that's likely how a shared use path eventually gets built here. And then that intersection at the driveway gets fixed as well. So you have a pedestrian crossing and a bunch of other things. So we're supporting the waiver at this time related to the daycare. It doesn't remove any future possibilities of it being triggered by Dan Foss. But that's our recommendation.
Questions for Kelly? Is there a motion and resolution approving request from Dan Foss to waive sidewalk installation requirement at 2800 East 13th?
Move alternative one.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Edie Hansen.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Very good. We'll move on to item number 29. Entertain motion on second reading of ordinance relating to rezoning of property at 3220 Cameron School Road
Move on.
from A to CGS and FSRM zone with master plan.
Move on second.
Second.
Roll call.
Garton.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Edie Hansen.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
And entertain motion on third reading and adoption of ordinance number 4569 on zoning text amendment to amend the PUD overlay open space standard for infill sites.
Move on third.
Second.
Roll call.
Junk.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Edie Hansen.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Garton.
Aye.
Entertain motion on third reading and adoption of ordinance number 4570, rezoning property located at 2715 Dayton Avenue from agricultural to government airport district S-GA.
Move on third.
Second.
Roll call.
Ledger. Batchor.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Fourier.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Aye.
And entertain motion on reading and adoption of ordinance number 4571 for 400 South 4th Street PUD overlay with site development plan.
Move on third.
Second.
Roll call.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Fourier.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Batchor.
Aye.
Thank you. There are no communications to council tonight. Reports from governing body. Discover Ames. Anything tonight?
Nope.
Ames Regional Economic Alliance.
I think we haven't met since the last time.
Last meeting. All right. Same for Story County Emergency Management Agency. No meeting since our last met. Transit.
Nothing here.
All right. Council comments. Gloria.
I have none.
Thank you. Brahman.
Well, I guess the gentleman who spoke earlier, just thank him for his thoughts on that. I think we can each look into maybe what Iowa City did, or, I haven't read about that. So I'll have to look into that more, but I just wanted to thank him for coming and sharing his thoughts.
Thank you. Nia.
Nothing tonight.
Ever?
Nothing for me.
Tim.
I was busy reading this agenda on Saturday. I don't even know what happened. What happened to the game on Saturday? Anyone? Did we have a report on the game? Anyone know?
I was told that we won.
Congratulations. Big win. Cy-Hawk game. Go Cyclones. Awesome. There we go. I thought it was funny.
All right. There is a celebration at Brookside Park on Saturday. Starts at 10, small program at 11, 100th birthday of Brookside Park. Dr. Winterstein and I will be offering some comments at 11. Everyone's welcome to attend. And those who are coming from the east side, you may have to be a little careful of navigating some of the street construction, but you can still get in. So,
Construction.
all right. Entertain motion to adjourn.
Move adjourn.
Second.
All right. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
You're adjourned. Thank you.